The Three Diamonds by Matthew Keller. Chapter 3. 1973. Michael Shepard Michaelson was the product of a modest upbringing. The second child of four, his parents, Thomas and Alice, raised their family in St. Louis City. Their home was a three-story brick house a few blocks south of Tower Grove Park on the city's south side. Michael believed that his house was the largest and nicest in a neighborhood of similar homes. This was not discouraged by his parents since they believed it as well. The home was built with deep red-colored bricks. The front of the house was a dominant surface with large windows, each with decorative ornaments of limestone on the frame's top and bottom. A steeply pitched roof of graphite-colored shingles covered the third floor and the entire structure. The home's entrance had a large wooden door with a thick glass panel in the upper half. The glass was bordered with a bezel around its perimeter which radiated a rainbow of light during the day. Access to the front door was up 3 concrete steps, then a wooden stairway leading to a wide porch, painted white with gray trim. Standing on either corner of the platform like two sentinels was a pair of large round columns extending upward, supporting a small roof. It was also pitched, providing shelter beneath it from most inclement weather. A public sidewalk crossed the frontage near the street. The grass-covered front yard sloped gently upward from the sidewalk to the house. The home was on less than a quarter of an acre. A large backyard dominated the rear of the property. From the kitchen door through the yard, a concrete walkway led to a 2-car garage and alley. Surrounding the backyard was a wrought iron fence. Within the yard were 3 mature peach trees. They provided ample fruit for the family each summer, as well as a swarm of bees, wasps and hornets when the over-ripened fruit fell to the ground. The interior of the home was plaster-walled with elegant wallpaper. The home's prized asset was most valued, a wood floor of varnished pine. Flawless and pristine, its high quality discouraged the inhabitants or visitors from placing the sole of any shoe on it. The problem of foot traffic was alleviated with the placement of fine Persian rugs in every room, entrance, and hallway. Leading to the second floor was a varnished wooden staircase. Its finish was darker than the floor and wound past an inset stained glass window. Placed on the west side of the home, it allowed the afternoon sun to spill its light and colors into the front entryway. The home had seemed like a cathedral to Michael when he and his family first visited the property, though not regarding its purchase. It was owned by Mrs. Sloan, a member of the family's church. She was an elderly woman whose husband had become seriously ill. Despite all efforts of his doctors, Paul Sloan's life was ending. Mrs. Sloan, because of this, decided to bring him home to pass in familiar surroundings. His bed was made in the front living room, eliminating any need for the diminishing soul to go up and down stairs. Paul was quite incapacitated and barely cognizant. This was the situation that greeted the Michaelson family when they visited the Sloans as a good work. The first visit was a somber experience for all regarding mortality. Paul occasionally mumbled or moaned, which Mrs. Sloan then attempted to address with comfort for him regarding all his needs or pain. The family's good work hardly provided more than someone for Mrs. Sloan to speak with for a couple of hours. The children were encouraged into good behavior by the unusual presence of a dying man in the living room. But Mrs. Sloan sincerely appreciated the visit, and it was an eye-opening experience for all concerned. Several weeks later, Mr. Sloan died. His wife ably provided him with as much assistance and love as possible till her beloved husband finally drifted away from this world. In the following days, arrangements prepared with the expectation of the inevitable, Paul Sloan was buried. Mrs. Sloan, now alone in her multi-room home, decided that it was time to move on. Jack Sloan, her adult son, lived in California. With his encouragement, she decided to move there and live her twilight years in the Golden State. Some time had passed since Mr. Sloane's death, so Thomas and Alice decided to pay Mrs. Sloane another visit on a summer afternoon. Without the burden of caring for her dying husband, the second visit was more casual and productive. Looking at the couple with their several young children, Mrs. Sloane inquired,
"So, how do you like the house?"
Alice replied.
"Oh, it's beautiful."
Thomas added,
"Yes, it's terrific."
"I've been hoping to sell it to a buyer who will take good care of it."
Mrs. Sloane stated while testing waters that neither Thomas nor Alice knew they were already swimming in.
"Oh?"
Alice quipped.
"Yes, you understand that I have a lot of fond memories associated with this home. I wouldn't want it to go to just anyone."
"Sure, that's understandable,"
Thomas stated. Mrs. Sloane took a breath and asked unexpectedly,
"Would you both be interested in buying it?"
Thomas and Alice's eyes widened while their shocked faces showed numerous levels of surprise and disbelief. Michael suddenly exclaimed,
"We're gonna live here."
His brother and sisters then joined in an instantaneous celebration of exciting possibilities and undreamt of surprise.
"No, settle down,"
Thomas stated with a stern look. Thomas was stunned beyond belief. He and Alice shared a look of hopefulness mixed with adult reality.
"We couldn't. We do good just affording our rent,"
he admitted with regret.
"How much is your rent? Per month?"
Mrs. Sloane asked politely.
$150
Alice replied.
per month."
"How much were you wanting for the home?"
Thomas inquired while secretly afraid of the answer.
"I'm asking for $30,000.
The couple's collective knowledge eclipsed the earlier shock of the unexpected offer in that they possessed no such sum in either bank account or mattress. Their checking account was typically closer to zero than $30,000. It might as well have been $30 million. The shared disappointment in Thomas and Alice's eyes was reinforced by the sin of the middle-lower class: bad credit.
"We couldn't afford that. Not in a million years,"
Thomas stated with a hard sadness.
You said you pay $150 for your rent, correct? Just pay me that. Per month."
Alice, Thomas, and the children couldn't believe their ears. Everyone was transfixed and utterly silent, as if startled by an odd sound in an old house. Thomas responded with regret in knowing something unpleasant. Which it was.
"We don't have any savings or funds set aside."
Mrs. Sloane replied.
"Don't worry about that. We'll just make it a nothing-down deal. You agree to pay me $150 per month."
The level of disbelief in the living room hit the ceiling on the third floor. Near complete incapacitation, Thomas mustered enough syllables to utter.
"We couldn't pay the closing costs."
"Don't worry about that either. I'll pay all the costs. You just pay me monthly. Think of it as a rent-to-own deal."
Mrs. Sloane's responses were rapid fire. It would be evident to a disinterested bystander that she was well beyond Thomas and Alice in this real estate chess match. It would also be obvious that Mrs. Sloane was trying desperately to sell her home to this family for a song, and that they were unintentionally trying to make it not happen. Alice and Thomas looked at each other. The children also looked at one another, all speechless with mouths wide open in shock.
"We'd like some time to discuss this if you don't mind,"
Alice stated sheepishly.
"Of course. Let me know your decisions soon though, because I'd like to sell to people I know without advertising in the paper. I want to be done with this quickly to move to California."
Once home, Alice and Thomas discussed the matter beyond the excitement of the earlier surprise and came to their decision. They would buy the home. The home they would see their children grow up in, and then eventually sell the property to another family. with a full down payment and closing cost paid by the buyer. At least that was the plan.